Hi everyone. Today let's take a very quick look at Netflix earnings. Then we'll get into all the usual data and charts. Then we'll finish up with my accounts for the day and my thoughts going into tomorrow's session. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the markets are open as well as Sundays, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So Netflix crushed earnings, adding 13 million subscribers. They now have 260 million subscribers. They also topped revenue estimates. Earnings, they did miss a little bit, 11 cents per share miss on earnings, but revenue beating by about $100 million. And then total memberships absolutely crushed, right around 5 million more than expected. So everything good there. The growth story is still on track. They do need to lean out a little bit in terms of earnings. We'll see if they have any interesting information come out in their forward guidance. Maybe I'll cover that in a second video, but for now, everything is good with Netflix and they are up massive after hours. Moving over to fear and greed, this really has not moved much for a couple of days now. You can see previous was 71, did tick slightly higher here. Let's look at the timeline. It's been flat really since the 19th, so a couple of days in a row, same price area. You can see price action still at all-time highs, but it has been flat just for a couple of days. Strength and breadth continue to be in greed. Put call ratio did move a little bit lower, back into regular greed. Volatility continues to be neutral, and then these bond indicators continue to be in extreme greed, which is interesting. People just don't seem to think there's a lot of risk in markets, which tends to be one of the times you should be a little bit more careful, but we just haven't seen anything yet to strike fear into markets. Moving over to seasonality, we are in this rally here for the Russell 2000. We are getting that rally. It looks good. This is the top performer during this period. You can see it here. NASDAQ slightly bullish, but mostly flat from this previous high on trading day 12. And then you can see everything else is typically flat during this period, if not slightly bearish into the end of the month. The Russell actually is expected to give back all of those gains here during this period also towards the end of the month, but we're not there yet. That was trading day 15, so we are on 16, so we have another rally flat for a couple days, another rally out to 18, which would be the end of the week, and then we should see a little bit of weakness based on seasonality. Moving over to earnings, I put a video out already on J&J as well as Procter & Gamble this morning, but they beat on everything except for revenue here for Procter & Gamble, but they did do quite well on earnings growth. You can see that pretty significant beat here. And then Netflix missing on earnings, beating on revenue. Verizon continues to do well, met on earnings, beat on revenue. General Electric beat, lots of green across the board, except for Texas Instruments here on revenue. And then looking at tomorrow, we do have Tesla after hours, so make sure you're paying attention to that. If you're holding into the close tomorrow, also have IBM, TNT. And then looking at Thursday, you do have Verizon, Intel, T-Mobile, Comcast, Union Pacific. Almost all of those are after hours, all the heavy hitters anyway. And then you have Comcast pre-market, Union Pacific pre-market. Fairly interesting. But obviously the heavy hitter is Intel along with Visa. Moving over to the economic calendar, tier note auction came in almost exactly the same spot as the previous one, slightly higher there. And then looking at Wednesday, global US manufacturing, global composite PMI, and global services PMI. Interesting to see services continuing to stay above that 50 mark. And then here, manufacturing PMI continues to contract there below the 50 mark. And then you do have the 5-year note auction. And then for Thursday in the morning, you do have core durable goods and headline durable goods, as well as GDP numbers. Thursday is the heavy hitter for economic data this week. New home sales, month over month, and then you have the total number here, and then you have the 7-year note auction and Fed balance sheet all on Thursday. So pretty heavy for Thursday for the economic data. Moving over to Max Payne, total options up over 800,000 now, 876,000. Put call ratio continues to be very high, 2.38, more in line with what we had been seeing. Top of the puts now at 487, so that continues to inch up just about every single day here. We are above that first call wall at 485. Next one here, 490. Continue to inch higher. Max Payne down at 478. Does not seem to hold a lot of weight at this point. Markets are just really optimistic, and we continue to close towards the top of the puts, which, like I said, is currently sitting around 47 to 48 for the end of the week on Friday, which gives you about 0.5% to 0.75% of upside from current levels. Moving over to the charts, starting off with the S&Ps here on the hourly, basically sideways chop, basically the same as yesterday until we rallied into the end of the day pretty strongly. You can see the two last candles of the day were the strongest, and then after hours we're getting that really strong pop from Netflix. We'll take a look at that chart a little bit later, but very strong here on the day. Ended up being about 0.29% to the upside. Momentum bullish. Continues to be strong. We're at all-time highs, continue to go into price discovery. We can see after hours we're above that peak high here from Monday. So everything's still bullish, and it's despite the price action that we saw yesterday. Moving over to the NASDAQ, interesting to see here that after hours it is not above the highs from Monday. So a little bit of a switch there. The NASDAQ had been the strongest. Maybe the gap up was just a little bit too strong to overcome. Those previous wick highs are up around 424.72, and then we rallied towards that a little bit more after hours. So closed the day around 423.50 or so, and then rallied up about another 50 or 60 cents. So momentum continues to tick towards bullish on both of these. Still overbought on the daily chart, but strong day, 0.41, and then like I said, up more after hours. If it's going to break above this previous high, we could get into more price discovery. Obviously, there's no levels or price targets right now, as there's nothing really to work off of. But if it does break above 424.65 or so, then we would be into some fresh highs. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, look at this interesting candle here on the Russell. Momentum continues to tick towards bullish, so you would expect to continue to see bullishness. And look at this massive gap up. We finished the day yesterday around 196.50 or so, and then we got all the way up to 198.50. Let's look at that on the shorter time frame. You can see that massive gap up, almost got to my level here. Rejected in the mid-session, ended up holding 195.15, rejected from the 21 EMA, and now you're almost in a consolidation. You could argue for a left shoulder head, right shoulder potentially setting up. So shorter time frames actually showing a little bit of weakness, something to watch for, but daily chart continues to look bullish. Momentum ticking towards bullish, holding that 50 level here on RSI. Pretty interesting. Definitely going to be watching this one in tomorrow's session. Russell looking a little bit odd, and then looking at the Dow. Technically, this is an island reversal, gapped higher, gapped lower. We are below my level, 379.35. Momentum continues to tick towards bullish, similar to the daily chart on the Russell. Let's look at it on the shorter time frame. Doesn't look great. So we dropped below the 9 EMA, held below it pretty much all day, tested the 21, fell below that. We're still below the 21, but got back above the 9. So it's kind of a consolidation at this point, still below the level after breaking through it. So again, longer time frames, still bullish, shorter time frames showing a little bit of weakness there. Moving over to Netflix here on the weekly chart, you can see this is a pretty wild chart. So we were rallying aggressively here throughout 2020, got all the way up to $700 just for a moment, and that was the very tippy top. And then we pulled all the way back to $165 with some massive moves on the weekly chart. This single week here was 36.82% down. That was their earning week, and that was a massive move. And then it continued lower all the way to those lows, and since then it's been pretty aggressive to the upside. Did have a little bit of a pullback here from July until October, and then it did rally with everything else. And then once again we're breaking back into this previous range. Need to add some levels here now that we're back into this range. Right at the top there, let's go ahead and add another one at the previous high in that 693 area. So the high from this consolidation right in that 560 area, and you can see after hours that big spike up. We'll take a look at that on the shorter time frames. But right now we had been consolidating at 495.95 or that $500 mark, and now with earnings, the big catalyst shoving us through that level, and you can see that here. Massive spike up after hours, massive beat on subscribers, which seems to drive this stock more than anything else. And like I said, 559.79 would be the level to watch. In the shorter term, I would expect it to get there with the big catalyst of earnings. Moving over to the less exciting Apple and Tesla. Apple continues to march higher. It's been on this move. Higher low setup, broke above the midpoint, rallied through, continues to hold that rally. Got above 194. Held above it, looking for 196.79 as your next resistance, and that is pretty close to your all-time highs. Let's go ahead and add a level there at the all-time high. The wick is up around 199.50, and then you do have that kind of mid-range just below the consolidation at 197.78. Those levels are a little bit tight. Really, I would be watching for that 199.54 level. So continues to look bullish. The momentum is fading slightly, and you're definitely overbought. Let's look at it on the daily chart. chart, pretty small doji. It is down a little bit after hours. Momentum still bullish. RSI not overbought on the daily chart. You can see that wick high before the dip. We're back into that zone here. Still looks okay, showing a little bit of weakness on the shorter time frame. And then looking at Tesla, continues to hold right in the same zone. It did throw a wick to resistance at 214, got all the way up to around 215 before pulling back to these previous lows. Momentum slightly bullish on the shorter time frames. Let's go ahead and look at the hourly. You can see that big move that it had right into this previous consolidation, gave all of that back. It is holding a slightly higher low from this previous low, so it does still seem like a consolidation on the shorter time frames. Daily chart still holding this trend. Let's go ahead and slide that down a little bit. We initially put this trend line in on that Thursday. Now we seem to hold it a little bit lower. Still looks okay. Momentum starting to tick back towards bullish. Does seem like Tesla is starting to find some buyers here at this consolidation. Moving over to top gainers for the mega caps, you can see Amazon had a big step up. Almost got to the pre-market highs from Monday. Didn't quite get there, up to 156.64, continues to hold that 21 EMA. That was a nice little hold there, rallied up. Next level, 159.89, continues to look good here. Want to see it break above that 157.26 area. I don't have a level there, it's just these wick highs where we had two rejections here going back to Thursday and then the most recent one here on Monday. I would expect it to break out from there. This does look quite bullish in my opinion. And then similarly here on Meta, we talked about this one in a separate video, but this continues to look good. It is grinding higher. We did have a little bit of a peak on Monday, similar to what we had here on Amazon, but you want to see it break out above that level, and Meta does continue to look good. Let's look at it on the daily chart. Inside candle, a little bit concerning there. It is pretty extended off of this big trend. Trend is obviously still intact. Momentum bullish, definitely overbought on the daily chart. Let's actually go one more up here to the weekly. This is an all-time high for Meta, so that is a little bit interesting as well. We are at those peaks here from September of 21, so definitely bullish, but it is showing a little bit of hesitancy at those all-time highs, so just something to watch for on Meta. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples perked up here today, more than 1% up, which is a big move for staples. 1.09, got right back to our resistance, touched it once again at 72.50. Very interesting momentum ticking back towards bullish. If this breaks 72.50 tomorrow and holds, then you're looking for $74. This was a pretty decent pullback, similar to what we saw here in December. Then we ended up making a much higher high, so definitely watching that on staples. Discretionary continued to sell off. It was weak yesterday, continued to sell off here today, 0.24%. It's still in the same zone, touched that highly traded zone at 173.30. Interesting there. Still below the 9 and 21 EMAs as well as VWAP. 55 sitting at 171.70, so that's an interesting level. I would expect a test of that within the next day or two, unless we see Tesla go bananas on strong earnings, then that would drive discretionaries higher tomorrow. Moving over to oil and gas and energy. We are on the backside of that cycle now. We've had 2 days of step downs, pretty consistent there. Touched the 9 EMA on both of these, pretty good wick. All the way up to 81.20, did pull back. It's up a little bit after hours on energy. Both of these look quite a bit stronger than they had on this downswing, finding support right at a critical level here on oil and gas. Held that level, all of the closes were above it. So pretty good there, pretty classic trade holding that level. And then here on energy, didn't quite get there, which actually shows a little bit of strength. And then in terms of levels, if it gets above this 80.63, which it did close above it by 1 penny, watch that level tomorrow, then you should have a little bit of rally into the end of the week, in my opinion. Moving over to breadth on the 20 and 50. 20 continuing to show rejection here at that 200 SMA at 55.30. Talked about that being resistance, so we dipped below it, found some support, not at a level, but did find some at 29 and then got back into this 55 range. So back towards that middle point, momentum continues to tick back towards bullish. And then looking at the 50-day average, we continue to sit right on top of that 55 EMA. Closed on it yesterday, closed on it again here today. Did touch the 9 EMA just for a moment. We'll see if it rejects from there. Momentum ticking towards bullish a little bit. Definitely not getting that straight follow through that you would have expected. Found support at 68.66, rallied back into a mid-range. Now we have to see what happens. If we continue to get upswing, then we have bullishness. If we reject from this area, that could be quite disastrous. Moving over to yields, 2-year and 10-year continuing to do the same thing that they have been doing. Slightly bullish day on the 10-year, slightly bearish day on the 2-year. Even with the auction that we saw today, so that is the current demand for 2 years, sold off a little bit from that previous high. Definitely consolidation, 10-year. Bullish day, fully engulfed the previous Monday, so up a little bit more after hours. Still watching that 55 EMA at 4.15. If it gets above that, this channel is going to continue, and then you have resistance up around 4.2, and then we should get back into more normalized conditions here pretty soon. Moving over to the 200-day, I don't cover this every video, but I did want to highlight it here. You can see we had that same dip low, touched a critical level here at 64.74. Held that level, bullish candle, bullish candle. Now we're at that 9 EMA. Momentum fading a little bit here. RSI did tick down off of the 9 EMA. If this rolls over here tomorrow, that could be a pretty interesting indicator, similar to what I mentioned on the 50-day average, so something to keep in mind there. Moving over to the dollar, massive push higher here today. Took out all of these wick highs on this previous consolidation. Got all the way up to the 144 EMA at 103.75. Dollar making new highs. Need to see it hold a higher low. And it did get all the way down and touch that 103 level before rallying up super aggressive. So definitely trapped some sellers in here. Buyers getting a really good price if they were looking at that level, and then rallied up really strong through to that next one. Now again, you need to see it get it back above 103.64 and then start to rally from there if it's going to do it. Again, dollar strength tends to indicate more weakness in equities, so that'll be something to watch for in tomorrow's session. Moving over to bonds, TLT threw a wick to the downside, didn't move very much today, still very much in the center of this wedge, right at the highly traded zone. Very interesting. Momentum didn't really move. RSI rejected a little bit from that SMA, and it is below the 21, not showing any kind of trend. Again, just in that wedge. And then TLT did gap lower, so we had a gap up, gap down, kind of an island reversal type setup, and based on that, I would expect it to go lower here. It is still holding right between the 55 and the 144 EMAs on the daily chart, but like I said, I am expecting the 10-year to go higher, which means TLT should be selling off some more. Moving over to the VIX here on the daily chart, expected the breakdown. Sure enough, we got it. We didn't quite get to the price level here in that 1230 range, right at these previous lows. Continue to be in this kind of rising, expanding wedge type setup. So you have this flat bottom of support with higher highs each time. If it holds here, probably got one more day similar to this one, hold in this area. And then if you get another spike like that, that could be quite bearish. So something to watch for on the VIX. We're in an interesting point, and like I said, looking for that support to hold. If it does, might be a time to look for some weakness in markets. Moving over to my accounts, you can see it says I was up $500 on the day. I'm not sure how real that is. Markets really didn't move that much, and I still have covered calls on, so I don't know if I really should have made that much money based on what it's saying, but I'll take it. If it holds up, I'll watch for it in tomorrow's session to see if my account values stay the same. But that's what it is right now, almost up to 116,000. When looking at individual positions, continue to hold IWM at 191. It was down a little bit on the day, covered almost all of that with profits on the call side, so basically flat there. Looking at the Qs, again, didn't change any of my positions. Shares continue to get more valuable. I have 400 shares, so every little tick there is pretty expensive. And then looking at my max profit on these positions, still sitting around that 425 to 426 range. So I have just a little bit of more upside potential there. And you can see it is up even more after hours into that 424 area. So looking at about another $1.50 of potential upside. I have a long time to wait for that to come in. It's been a colossal run, seems to continue to go higher every single day. So just going to be patient. We'll see how it plays out. And then looking at the TQQs, again, markets went higher here. So making money on those shares, continuing to hold these puts as markets go higher. And then I do have that covered call for 10 days from now at $54. That's a $3.20 credit on that. So my max profit there is $57.20. So that gives me quite a bit of room there, about another $2 from current price. And then XLE, I still have this one call, still trying to get out of it, but XLE does kind of look good going into tomorrow's session. Might look for a position there. We'll see how it plays out. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of Netflix or any of the charts that I mentioned. Is Netflix going to drive markets higher? or is this just short term over the next 24 hours? Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.